Hi everyone, it's Lee here and welcome to this week's coaching video. So in this video I wanted to take a look at a new post I've created called Are Irrational Beliefs Limiting Your Growth? So the first one is around people pleasing and we can take a look at that now. So what are irrational beliefs? Well, some common ones that might come to mind are things like I believe in aliens, or I don't deserve to be rich, or I don't deserve to be loved, or I don't deserve a good job. There's those kind of ones that are, irrational, and maybe you've believed into those for a certain time or after a certain event or something like that. Or you may have a crazy uncle or a crazy friend that, believes in aliens or the government's against him or whatever the case. So those ones are quite clear and stand out and can even be comedy points in movies and that kind of thing. But what about irrational beliefs that are a bit closer to home? What about one like people pleasing and that you need to please everybody all the time? So that's about the first one that I've written in this new post. It's called I Need Everyone to Approve of Me. Now these have been identified by Albert Ellis. There's actually 14 of them, and these beliefs are behind common dysfunctional behaviour and attitudes that aren't going to serve you well. So as part of my training I went through these and learned about these and was quite surprised how some of them I've certainly had or knew about at different times in my life, and they would certainly be limiting my growth and my success, and so I want to pass that on to you guys to see if this is a problem for you and how you can start to alleviate it or dissolve it from your mindset so you can get that growth and success that you're after. So what's the purpose and what's the benefit of this? Perhaps you're interested in a career change or a new business venture, something like that. If you've got these people-pleasing behaviours, perhaps that's holding you back from being taken seriously, and perhaps you're compromising your own values and your own beliefs and your own needs, and you're not putting yourself first and not getting that success and that next level up that you're after. So the benefit of breaking through and breaking down some of these limiting beliefs is, a bit like a car, that you can actually fix the problems ahead of time so you don't get stranded and you can continue on your journey. So a little bit like a car, you can draw some analogies there. So have a read through this post to get the full vibe of it. And the main benefit there is that you can actually proceed with confidence. So you can proceed in confidence in your life, in your career, in your business ventures, knowing that you're operating from a place of complete authenticity and you're not sort of being either taken advantage of or people pleasing and compromising your own values and your own standards, your own integrity in some way. Okay, so let's have a look at the people-pleasing one. I need everyone to approve of me. So why do people compromise their own sincerity, integrity and authenticity to please other people? So the thought there was that it is usually because of their opinions and needs and thoughts, and that their identity in some way isn't good enough. And this can stem from an upbringing where they've been rejected or abused or something like that. So does this sound like you, or sound like you at certain times of your life? Have you grown out of this, or is this still a problem, perhaps with certain groups of people? So do some self-reflection here to see if this is a problem. I certainly have felt this way, certainly in earlier times in my career, where you were a people pleaser, and that can be for various reasons. Obviously in the workplace it can be a little bit tricky because that can be part of your job and part of your role, but I think the point here I want to get across is to increase that awareness and mindfulness around people pleasing and try and discern the difference between people pleasing, your role in work or in a relationship, and just try and work out that difference and see where your values or integrity is being compromised or might be being compromised. And what's the boundary around that? What are you willing to accept, to compromise sometimes? And where's that hard boundary where you won't step over? So classic image here, and I'm certainly, we can understand what this lady might be feeling if she's had to stay back after work or working late from home, working on a Sunday, something like that. Why did she say yes to this again? So if you can resonate with this lady, then certainly read on and evaluate with these next couple of questions. But what I did want to throw in there as well is just a bit of a take here on around the conditioning behaviour that a lot of us will have been brought up in, a people-pleasing environment. It starts at home with our parents, where we're conditioned to do the right thing, to make our bed, eat our tea, stay quiet. And that obviously continues through school and that kind of thing. And there might be some rebellious years where we break out of that kind of behaviour, but perhaps not. Perhaps that continues into the workplace, and we end up in this people-pleasing cycle, if you like, that doesn't stop, and it's a conditioned behaviour. And maybe there's times when you've tried to break away from that people-pleasing behaviour, and it hasn't ended well, and so you've gone back into that cycle. So it's important there just to have a think about that conditioning effect, and if that is relevant for you. And if you've tried to break out of that cycle, and then that hasn't ended well, and you've returned back into that conditioning effect, and you've just made that either conscious or unconscious decision that you will be a people pleaser. And now we want to look at the cost of that people pleasing and what it's actually costing you. Is it costing you growth and success in some way? So the good news here is, by being mindfully aware of people pleasing and this new belief that you don't need to seek the approval of everyone, you can begin to choose differently. So we're not saying that we need to become a rebel and say no to everybody. It's about increasing that awareness and picking and choosing appropriately. So what can you do? So first point there we've sort of touched on about living mindfully through your day. So you can catch yourself people-pleasing. And you might want to do this, perhaps for a few days or a week, and just really take note of the people that you are people-pleasing with, and perhaps the ones where you have a more equal relationship, and just try and tease out the details around that. The next question there is around evaluating why. And why are you compromising your values, your tastes, beliefs, or character in some way? Is it all of these things, or is it just one or two of these things? Have a think about it and try and come up with a why that you're people pleasing. You might start to dig through a few layers there and start to get into the feeling or emotion that you're trying to resolve or fill in some way. There might be a gap there of loneliness, or not being rewarded enough for your efforts, or something like that that's driving your people pleasing. So what would happen if I chose differently? So it could be a boss, a wife, a husband, a friend, a work colleague, someone in your family, or even just in general day-to-day life as you're walking around the street and going about your business. What would happen if you chose differently? So I won't give any examples, but I'll let you have a think about that one, and perhaps you can start to run through some of those scenarios if you chose differently. Don't worry about how just yet, but what would the outcomes be if you did choose differently? And what would this mean for your self-worth and happiness? So what if you were not tied to pleasing this person? Your happiness is not tied to pleasing this person. What if your self-worth and happiness could be derived from just being who you are? what would that mean? So some interesting questions there for you. So use those as a starting point and raise your self-awareness over the next few days just around how you are people pleasing. And so remember, this is in relationships, and so close family relationships, maybe with your partner, and at your workplace. Obviously there's a different environment going on where, you know, there's an exchange of money for services and time and that kind of thing. So use a bit of common sense here around that. And there's obviously mutual benefits and obligations in a work environment and in a husband and wife or relationship type situation. So use a bit of common sense around it, but start to have a think about that people pleasing and have a think about what it's actually costing you and what the benefits would be if you choose differently. So that's this week's video, and I hope you've found it useful, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.